By 1300 AD, Europeans were farming almost all the land they could cultivate. A population crisis developed. They suffered massive crop failures from 1314 to 1317 due to drastic weather change and excessive rains. As many as 15% of peasants died. In some villages, all died as a consequence of poverty and starvation. With the extension of the Silk Road from Eastern Asia, the century-old plague virus was now free to ravage the western part of the continent. The plague virus spread through Europe at an incredible rate and flourished in medieval townships and countrysides. The first signs of this devastating disease became a concern in Sicily around 1347. From this southern point in Western Europe, the disease crawled up the coast at an annual pace. It reached northern Europe by December of 1350. I have some great information on how the plague was so easily spread and almost impossible to figure out. Medieval Europeans had no idea that their lifestyles were working directly against them. Europeans had no method for cleaning up sanitation. Their streets were lined with filth. Farmers would muck their stalls and push the hazardous materials into the street, as well as throw pails of dirty, filthy water over the balconies of their houses. Their floors in the homes were made of dirt. Rats lived there in the walls and the ceilings. Yersinia pestis is the name of this tic-tac look-alike. This bacteria takes on three main forms: pneumonic, septicemic, and bubonic. It's most commonly believed that these little bacterium are consumed by fleas from an infected host. The bacteria causes the guts of the flea to become blocked. The flea then begins to starve, which forces the flea to feed aggressively. The blockage is regurgitated, thereby flushing thousands of Yersinia pestis bacteria into the host. Okay, let's do a recap. So the flea drinks infected blood from a rat host. The bacteria multiply in the flea's guts. This clogs them up. The flea then regurgitates the blood into human wounds. Now the human is infected. Rats are not our friends. Take a look at this chart that shows the stages from day 1 to day 5. That's all it took to get you on your deathbed. No one likes to see pussing, gooey, open wounds, but that's what you get. Watch out for those rats. While looking at these illustrations, you may think it couldn't get any worse, but the truth is the mortality rate amongst plague victims was huge. Pneumonic plague victims died 90 to 95% of the time. Septicemic plague victims died 100% of the time. Now that we've seen these hideous pictures, check out who would come to see if you were okay and try to cure you. This is a medieval doctor at his best. We're going to find out what we can do if you were to contract the plague. If you think about modern surgeons, these medieval doctors weren't too far off by covering their mouth and their nose, but such a scary outfit couldn't have been good for bedside manner. I know. After such gruesome pictures, I might need a psychiatrist also. But here comes some more, so keep your head up. Oop. Ew, gross. What is that? Well, that's a swelling known as a bubo. These are found in the lymphatic system wherever your lymph nodes are located. Your groin, your armpit, or around your neck. Ooh, watch out. To a medieval doctor, a lance was not just something that you jousted with. They would use these as tools to cut open the buboes, or swellings, and drain the fluid from within. You didn't think doctors had such cool tools in medieval times, did you? Not only did they use these tools to cut people open, but to take the swelling down, they used the acidity in certain vegetables like figs or potatoes. If lancing the buboes didn't work, bring on the leeches. Leeches were used to help drain the bad blood, bile, phlegm, or choler from a person's body. These were the things that were out of balance that could have been making people sick. If your humors weren't out of balance, there was one cure left. Let's find a frog. We put the belly of that frog on your sore. The frog will swell up and burst. Keep doing this until the frog stops bursting. Your infection's gone. The thing about the plague was that it didn't just attack poor people. It wasn't just the peasants that were dying. Nuns, monks, royals, knights, they were dying just as quickly from this disease. How could that be? It wasn't until 1315 that the Catholic Church, which was a majority in medieval Europe, decided that the plague could not have been a manifestation of sins, since royals and nuns and monks were dying as well. It must have been carried in on the backs of immigrants from southern Europe. This, of course, was the most absurd of all things. Okay, gang, let's do a little recap. What have we learned? We know that there are 3 types of the plague virus, caused by those pesky tic-tac-looking bacteria known as Yersinia pestis. They are the pneumonic plague, which had about 100% mortality rate, the septicemic plague, which carried 90 to 95% mortality rate, and the bubonic plague, which killed 30 to 70% of those who were infected. We also learned that the bubonic plague was the one that most impacted Europe, killing almost 1/10 of the population. We learned that there are different methods by which physicians tried to cure their patients: leeching, lancing, and frogging. Before we finish, I have a couple songs to hopefully lighten the mood. One song you may have heard, and the other should be new. I hope you enjoy. A sickly season, the merchant said. The town I left was filled with dead, and everywhere these queer red flies crawled upon the corpses' eyes, eating them away. Fair make you sick, the merchant said. They crawled upon the wine and bread, pale priests with oil and books, bulging eyes and crazy looks, dropping like the fly. I had to laugh, the merchant said. The doctors purged and dosed and bled, and proved through solemn disputation the cause lay in some constellation. Then they began to die. First they sneezed, the merchant said, and then they turned the brightest red, begged for water, then fell black, with bulging eyes and face turned black. They waited for the flies. I came away, the merchant said. You can't do business with the dead, so I've come here to ply my trade. You'll find this to be a fine brocade. And then he sneezed! The last song I want you to think about is a children's hit from way back. You've probably sang it 100 times. Ring Around the Rosy. The symptoms of the plague included a rosy red rash in the shape of a ring on the skin. Ring around the rosy. Pockets and pouches were filled with sweet-smelling herbs or posies, which were carried due to the belief that the disease was transmitted by bad smells. In the English version of Ring Around the Rosy, they replaced ashes with achoo, achoo. I hope I sufficiently grossed you out and that you learned something at the same time. Next time you hear this song, think of the plague.